partner. Because if you notice here, the hip bone is not necessarily a good, I would say the word foothold, but it's not really a good platform for me to hold my hand on. Because from here, if you just pull on my hand goes to the mat. Not necessarily that this is the worst thing in the world, but let's say he does manage to bring my head away. I do incur a bit of risk. So I prefer placing my hand on my partner's ribs. So you can see here it's on his ribs. And then I place my elbow on the inside of my partner's thigh. Is it like adductor or abductor? One of those, where basically I'm creating this kind of opening pressure on my partner's legs as to kind of make it difficult for him to then pummel his knee and bring it towards me. So, right, I'm here, and whether I'm standing, whether I'm kneeling, I'm my elbow tucked, hand on the knee, right? I can pull the knee up, pull the knee down, but my elbow is tucked to my ribs. I can do this from standing, right, where I'm here, right, and Lynn tries to push me, tries to recover, etc. I can maintain decent positioning, right? And something that I actually like to do as well is, like what you saw just now where Lynn was able to step on my bicep. Sometimes, especially when we adopt this type of position, or my partner makes it so that it's difficult for us to occupy the inside of the far knee, what we can also do is deny our partner the space by our bicep for them to step into the lasso. Because understand that I can do this, but let's say my partner, like I'm occupying the inside of the far knee, but if there's so much space here, sometimes, especially flexible people, can just insert a lasso. So something I like to do in conjunction with any actual hip post, so this can change, it doesn't have to be hip and knee post, any hip post, is that when I feel as though I'm not able to prevent them from inserting this high leg, what I'm going to look to do is I'm going to touch my ear to my own bicep. So now when Lynn tries to pummel this in, now if he actually wants to successfully do this lasso, he has to pummel the far shoulder, which is a lot more difficult than pummeling to the near shoulder. So if you feel we're here and we're working, and we feel like, okay, he's getting that in, I just pummel my ear to my bicep, and I do the same thing when I pressure it, and from here, it's going to make it very difficult for your partner to recover guard. So, first grip, hip and knee post, and we'll go over the next few grips I like to use next. So, the next grip we're going to go over is collar tie and hip post. So, instead of playing at the knee, something I also really like to do is actually bringing my hand to my partner's head. And this can sometimes come as a result of me feeling like he's moving his head too far away, or maybe him stripping this grip on the knee. Because sometimes if I'm here trying to affect the knee, he tries stripping, I fight here, I'm going to hand fight. But then this gives me an opportunity to start looking to switch to a collar tie. I do prefer a collar tie overall, especially for the purpose of maintaining an advantageous passing position. For a pass, I don't think the collar tie offers anything too crazy. However, understand what the collar tie does is it limits it breaks your partner's posture, and therefore it limits two things. It limits their ability to exert force, like pushing, framing, because like if you think about it in this context of like Flynn had to do a bench press, and if you asked him to do a bench press with his head on the mat, right, he could do probably like a normal bench press. However, if you were to take his head off the mat, like ask him to take his head off the mat and do a bench press, obviously we're not putting weight on him, but he's going to be a lot weaker. So understanding the effect that posture has on your partner's ability to exert force, but then also understand how that may affect your partner's range of motion. So from here, something that can also happen when you do take your partner's head off the mat is that his ability to pummel his foot is going to be a lot worse. Because if you think about it like this, like when I'm here and right? If I'm playing with my head off the mat, it's a lot harder for me to be flexible than if my head's on the mat. Like especially if they're pushing or if I'm trying to pummel, I find that bringing my head off the mat, it's going to be a lot more uncomfortable for me, as well as I'm going to have to engage my core to some degree. But just by playing with the head off the mat, my range of motion and my ability to kind of traverse this range of motion is going to be very limited. So by using this type of hip post, and the hip post, we discussed everything that I try to think about when using the hip post earlier. But some things we need to consider when doing the collar tie is I don't want to just fatigue my bicep. I don't want to be here and just doing like a bicep curl the whole time. So often what I'm going to look to do, whether I'm on my knee here, standing here, is I'm going to look to place my elbow on the top of my own thigh here. So as to kind of reinforce my collar tie. So now when he tries to bring his head to the mat, it's actually like my own, my own shin is holding myself up. So like obviously if we do encounter resistance, right, like we strip this, we can always switch back to alternative grips. But through this hand fight, I feel like they're pummeling very well. I'm often going to use this grip where I can break my partner's posture, as well as this limits their ability to bring their head away from us. understand that if Lynn's head is close to me, right, like here, and we'll talk about alternative grips like this in a moment, when he tries to like recover guard, lasso, etc., right, lasso me, it's so difficult from here. For him to effectively retain guard, he wants to bring his head away from me. Right? From here, all of this comes in so easily. So what this can also do is also limit your partner's ability to bring their head away. So when he tries to bring the head away, all this, it's so difficult. So the three main purposes of using the collar tie and how it helps us is, one, it limits their ability to exert force. Two, it limits their ability to traverse range of motion. And three, it limits their ability to bring their head away. And then how we can start looking to do that practically, a good like kind of piece of advice is using your elbow on your own thigh to reinforce this grip. All right, so the next grips I want to go over is actually probably one of my favorites, aside from the collar tie, is actually kind of like an overback reverse collar tie variation, where from here, and sometimes I almost prefer this because from here, when I feel like there's resisting, I can actually bring like either reverse collar tie into play, but almost what I prefer is either going to be a weighted frame or a proper overback position. So similarly, where I'm playing with the hip post, this actually gives me the luxury to migrate away from the hip post and move into alternative options, whether it be like a near side hip block or even like just coming underneath. Ideally, honestly, having an underhook from here is a really strong option, because now when my partner tries to push me away and recover guard, it's very difficult. Even if they try to like pummel their outside leg in, even though I'm not doing anything to block the outside leg, like let's say even pummels a butterfly hook from here. This is a great opportunity for us to go into our like half butterfly passing where we can step over, etc. So often what I'll do, especially as I'm trying to pressure in past my partner's framing, etc., what I'm often going to do is use a reverse collar tie, keep their head close, and then drop my elbow over. A lot of my effort is going to be placed on almost bringing my knee towards my elbow so that I'm strong here. So now when my partner starts looking to push me away, it's difficult. However, something we need to consider is that we still want to exercise control over our partner's lower body. Because let's say we're here, I have the same grips, but if I don't do anything to his lower body, he comes up on me, especially on an underhook, he can build up, turtle, etc. So from here, I recommend either, if you can play with an underhook here, or like even like a pseudo underhook. Now when they try to like build up, it's going to be very difficult. However, if you feel as though maybe they have an underhook on you, and you feel like, wow, like he tries bringing his knees in, like first do normal guard retention, and you feel like, okay, he's not getting anywhere, like even with the butterfly hook, doesn't really work too well. From here, you feel like his legs start moving away, right? And he starts looking to build up. I want you to follow his hips and either transition to a leg ride position, or before they actually successfully scissor their legs, like let's say they're here recovering, if you can come back, bring your leg back. If you can get your knee into like a pseudo half guard, this is also a very strong option. And then this is like very reminiscent of overback half guard passing. But my general preference is going to be when we're here and I'm camping, and I feel like they're recovering, the moment I go for this overback, we can also bring our knee up as to make it very difficult for our partner to look to heist up. Because now we're actually taking their heist leg off of the mat. And so now when my partner looks to try to recover, heist, scissor their legs, etc., it's difficult. They might pummel a butterfly hook in, like to try to get my knee out, but actually we can use our right elbow in this case, like notice that